Hey everyone, welcome to Data Millennials. I'm Atul, and in this video we are going to discuss about Python function, and we are going to see what different type of functions that we have in Python. So let's try to understand about the function first. A function is a set of statements put together to perform a specific task. Functions are very much useful when a block of a statement has to be written once and executed multiple times with or without different input. Thus, the function is a standard unit of reuse in programming. Functions are useful when the program size is too large or complex, and functions are called to perform each task sequentially from the main program. A function is an object, and the interpreter passes the control to the function along with the argument of the function to accomplish a specific task. The function in turn performs its task and returns control to the interpreter as well as any result which is further stored into another objects. So in Python there are basically four type of function. The first one is built-in functions. The second one is user defined functions. Third one is lambda function, and the last one is recursive function. Okay, so we are going to see each and every type of function one by one in this video, and we'll take one simple example of each different type of functions in Python. And in next upcoming videos we are going to discuss about these four different type in more detail. As this is an introductory video on function, we would be looking out at a simple example of these four different type of function. So let's start with the built-in function. What exactly is a built-in function? So Python's built-in function are a collection of predefined function provided by the language itself. For example, when you say print, this is also a predefined function in Python. Okay, these functions are always available for use without the need of any additional import or libraries. Built-in functions are designed to perform a variety of common tasks such as data type conversion, mathematical operations, string manipulation, and many more. Utilizing these functions can make our code more readable and efficient. Now, the question that should come in your mind is that why should we use built-in function? And I can give you four major reasons that why we should use built-in function. The first one is efficiency. So built-in functions are implemented in C, making them faster and more efficient than equivalent functions written in pure Python. The second reason is simplicity. They provide a simple and straightforward way to perform common tasks. Thus, it reduces the need of writing boilerplate codes in Python. Third reason is the readability. Using well-known built-in function can make the code more readable and easier to understand for others who are familiar with Python. The last reason or the fourth reason is reliability. Since built-in functions are part of the standard library, they are thoroughly tested and maintained, ensuring the reliability. Now let's take a simple example of an inbuilt function in Python. Okay, so I am going to make a list over here in which I am going to put couple of items, let's say 10, 20, 30, and 40. And now let's assume that I want to get the length of this list, that how many items are present in this list. So if we go through the pure programming part, then we have to use loops, and then we can get the length of this item. So when we use loops, then we have to iterate over each and every item and get the length and store it into a particular counter which will get incremented when we access the next item, then to the next item, and then to the next item, and then the list ends. Then we have to get the result saved into a variable. But in built-in function we already have a function which is len, which gives us the length. So let's say that I have to save this length into this variable length. Okay, let me put it like length of list, and then we will use this inbuilt function len which gives the length basically. So within this length function I'm going to put the list name which is my list, and then if I print length of list, And if I run this, you can see that I'm getting 4, and exactly we have 4 different items in our list. So what we did was that we declared my list with 10, 20, 30, 40. So basically we defined a list with 4 elements. Then we used the len function to get the number of elements in my list and assign it to a variable length of list. And then we printed that length of list, which basically gives us the length of or the item that is present in my list. Okay, now let's talk about the user defined function. Writing function is a core activity of a programmer, and Python provides a great support to create user defined function. User defined function is nothing but a function which you, me, or any programmer will create based on their requirement. They are created according to the requirement of the user, and once the function is created, they are used like any other built-in function in Python. They basically act as a turning point from user to a developer who creates new functionality for Python, which can be shared with others. The body of the function contains a collection of a statement that basically defines the task of function, and when a function is called, we may or may not need to pass a value to the argument. The user-defined function allows a developer to create an interface to the code specified with a set of arguments, and this interface allows the developer to communicate to the user with the aspect of the code that are important or are most relevant. Typically, a function produces a result based on the parameter that has been passed to it. However, it is possible that a function may contain no argument at all. Thus, a function has a name, a list of parameter which might be empty, which might not be empty, and a result which may be returned or which may not be returned. Now if we talk about the syntax of the user defined function, then it is something like this, that you have to give def, then the function name, and then argument 1, argument 2, and you can give multiple arguments, and then you have to give the function body. Okay, let's talk about this syntax a little more. So this function name is the actual name of the function stored in the Python environment. You can give any name whatever you want based on your use cases. Let's say that if you're adding two numbers, then you can give the function name as add two numbers. If you are doing any mathematical computation, you can simply put the function name as mathematical computation. Now if we talk about this argument 1 and argument 2, these are optional arguments. An argument is like a placeholder. When a function is invoked, we pass a value to the argument, and this value is referred to as actual parameter or argument. The argument list refers to the order and number of the argument of a function. A function can or cannot contain argument. Now the last part that we have in this syntax is function body. So function body contains a collection of statements that define the task of that function. We have to note that the function name and the argument list together constitute the function signature. So this function name and argument basically constitute the function signature. The task of the function is to perform an action. When a program calls a function, a program control is transferred to the called function, and that called function will perform a defined task, and when the return statement is executed in the function or the last statement of the function is reached, then it will return the program control back to the main program. And to call a function, we simply need to pass the required parameter along with the function name, such as like this. We can simply call function underscore name, and we can give the argument like this. Okay, so to call the function, we'll simply need to pass the argument along with the function name, and if the function returns a value, then we need to store the returned value into a variable. So we'll say result as a variable, and we'll store the returned value from this function into this result variable. So let's create a very simple example of user defined function in Python. So we'll start with def, and then we'll put the function name. So for our program, we'll simply put greeting to user, and then we have to give the brackets, then colon, and then we have to write any statement, or we have to give the function body. As we have not given any function argument over here, so when we are calling this function, we do not need to give any argument while calling the function. So within this print, I'm just gonna say hello dear user. Then again I'm gonna give a print statement saying that welcome to the Python for Data Analyst series from Data Millennials. Okay, now if I run this, nothing will happen, because when you ran this, the function got executed by interpreter, but you have not called this function. So now if I call this function, basically if I simply write greeting to user and then I give this bracket, this is calling of the function. So now if I run this, you can see that we have two print lines over here, two printed lines actually over here. The first one is hello dear user, and second one is welcome to Python for Data Analyst series from Data Millennials, which we have given over here in the function body. Now let's talk about the third type of function in Python, which is lambda function. So lambda function are known as anonymous function. The lambda functions are small, or you can say it's a one line function defined using the lambda keyword. So whenever you are using the lambda function, or whenever you are creating a lambda function, you will have to give this lambda keyword while defining the function. This lambda function can take any number of argument, but will always have only one expression, and it is used for creating small throwaway functions without the need to formally define it with the def keyword in our program. Now the question that we need to understand is that when to use this lambda function. So it can be used whenever you have a short term requirement, when you want to write a function within a particular line, and if you are conscious of your length of the program, then you can use these functions. So if we talk about the short term use, then lambda functions are ideal for the short term use when a small function is needed on a temporary basis. Now if we talk about inline use of this lambda function, then we use this lambda function because whenever a function is required as an argument to a higher order function like map, filter or sorted, then we use this lambda function. Now if we talk about consciousness, then for small functions that can be defined in a single line, lambda function makes the code more concise. Let's talk about the example of lambda function that we can write over here. Consider a scenario where we need to get the square of the numbers that is present in a list. As we know that we'll get the square, and then we are not going to use that function anymore in our entire program, then we can use the lambda function. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I am going to create a list with numbers saying that 1 2 3 4 and 5. Then I'm going to get the result in squared numbers, and in this I'm going to perform the lambda function. Before that, I'm just going to add certain things, and I'll explain you this why we are adding this. So list, within this list I'm going to add map. Then I'm going to give the lambda functions by using this keyword lambda x colon x into 2, and then I have to give the list on which I'm going to implement this lambda function. Now if I print this squared numbers, I have to remove or replace, there is a typo error, so squared numbers. So if I print this square number, I should ideally get a square for each of these elements within this number list. Okay, so let's run this first and then I'll explain this program line by line. Okay, so let's run this. So we are getting 1 4 9 16 and 25. Okay, so this number 1 2 3 4 5, this is nothing but we are defining a list of numbers. Then we have this map function over here. This map function helps us to apply this lambda function to each and every element. Okay, then we have this lambda function. This lambda function takes each element present in this number list and basically squares it. So the lambda function takes the argument x and return the x squared. Now let's talk about this list. This list convert the map object to the entire list which we are getting over here. Then we are printing this squared numbers. Okay. So lambda function provide a quick and concise way to create a simple function for immediate use, and it helps us to enhance the code readability and efficiency in appropriate situations. Now let's talk about the last type of function that we have in Python is recursive function. So recursive function. A recursive function is a sort of a function that call itself in order to solve a problem. The function generally includes a base case, which is the condition under which the recursion ends, and a recursive case, which is where the function call itself. Now if we talk about when to use recursive function, so whenever we have a scenario like divide and conquer problem that can be divided into a smaller subproblem of the same type, such as merge sort or quick sort algorithm, then we use this recursive function. If we have to work with tree and graph traversal, then we can use this recursive function. If we are doing a dynamic programming where we are solving problems that involve overlapping subproblems such as calculating the Fibonacci number or solving the knapsack problem, then we can use this recursive function. If we are backtracking, so backtracking means exploring all the possible solution like solving a puzzle or performing combinational searches, then we can use this recursive function. So let's take a very simple example of recursive function. Let's calculate factorial. Before we calculate factorial, let's understand what is a factorial. The factorial is nothing but a product of all the positive number less than the given number. So if I give the number 5, then factorial will be 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. Okay. So now if I have to write a program for factorial of 5, then how I can do that? I'll simply use the recursive function in Python, saying that I'll define a function saying def factorial, and then I'll be giving the argument n over here, saying that what number, for which number you want the factorial. Then I'm going to check if this value n is equal to 0 or n is equal to 1, which will be my base case. Okay, so this will be my base case. If n is equal to 0 or n is equal to 1, then I will return 1. Else what I'm gonna do, else I have to perform this part. So if my number is, or my number n is 5, then I have to get 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, right? So if I put this return keyword with return, I'm gonna put n into factorial of n minus 1. So over here within the function we are calling this function. Okay, so that's why it's known as recursive function. Okay, now if I print this factorial with 5, then we should get the value 120, because if we multiply 5 into 4 into 3 into 2, we'll get 120. Okay, so let me run this first. So I'm getting 120. Now let's get into this program and understand line by line. So this def factorial n defines the recursive function factorial that takes a non-negative integer. Over here, if n equal to 0 or n equal to 1, checks the base case that if n is 0 or 1, the function will always return 1, because the factorial of 0 and 1 is 1. Then we have this else case. In this else case, we are giving this return n into factorial n minus 1. This is the recursive case. If n is greater than 1, then the function returns n multiplied by factorial of n minus 1, which is nothing but 5 into 4 into 3 into 1 in our case. And then we are calling this factorial function in the print function. So we call the factorial function with 5 as the argument, and it prints the result, which is 120. So this is a very high level overview of the Python function, where we have seen what is inbuilt function, what is user defined function, what is lambda function, and what is recursive function. In our next video, we'll start with the built-in function where we'll see different type of inbuilt function and we'll also write code with that. Happy learning and see you in the next video.